There are many places around the world that time has forgotten about. Marvels of architecture that have now become hauntingly decimated, run down, and lost to the passing of time. And amongst them, entire cities now sit eerily empty and quiet.
This town was inhabited a century ago.
Today, we'll be exploring them to discover their true condition. Join us as we have a look at 15 of the largest abandoned cities in the world. Number 1. Pripyat, Ukraine. In the heart of Ukraine, Pripyat was once a bustling city brimming with life. Founded in 1970 to serve the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it became a symbol of Soviet progress, a model city with a vibrant community, lush parks, and even an amusement park. But little did the residents know their world was going to be turned upside down. April 26th of 1986 would mark a catastrophic turn in its history. The Chernobyl disaster, one of the most devastating nuclear accidents in history, unfolded only a few kilometers away. In the early hours of the morning, reactor number 4 would explode, releasing lethal amounts of radioactive materials into the atmosphere. Initially, the severity of the incident was underplayed, and life would continue on, unaware of the invisible danger that was lurking in the air. However, the gravity of the situation would soon become clear. The city, which was home to about 49,000 people, would be hastily evacuated. Residents were told to take only their essential items, as they would return in a few days. This return, however, was never to be. The streets that were once full of laughter and children, along with the hustle and bustle of daily life, fell eerily silent. Homes, schools, and playgrounds were left as they were, creating a snapshot of life frozen in time. Today, it's a haunting reminder of the disaster. Nature has reclaimed the city, trees have grown through the cracks in the pavement, and wildlife roams freely. The amusement park, which was set to open only days after, now features a rusty Ferris wheel, a ghostly symbol of joy that was never realized. Guided tours cautiously take visitors through the desolate streets, offering a glimpse into post-apocalyptic world. Number 2. Hashima Island, Japan. Off the coast of Nagasaki in Japan, Hashima Island, often referred to as Battleship Island due to its ship-like silhouette, tells the story of both industrial triumph and eerie desolation. This small fortress-like island was once the bustling heart of the undersea coal mining industry, playing a pivotal role in Japan's rapid industrialization during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Hashima's journey began in 1887 when Mitsubishi purchased the island and began exploiting its rich coal reserves. It quickly transformed into a thriving mining community, and at its peak, it was one of the most densely populated places on Earth, with over 5,000 residents crammed into its 6.3-hectare landmass. Life on the island would be uniquely communal. Families and workers lived in tightly packed apartment blocks, surrounded by facilities like schools, shops, and hospitals, all set against the backdrop of relentless mining operations. However, as Japan's reliance on coal would diminish, replaced by petroleum, Hashima's fate was sealed. The mines were deemed to be unprofitable and were closed in 1974. This would lead to a rapid exodus which left the island deserted. Buildings that had once echoed with the voices of miners and their families would now stand silent, their walls crumbling, their windows shattered, and corridors full of debris. In recent years, Hashima has gained international attention, not only for its historical significance, but also for its haunting post-apocalyptic landscape. Designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015, the dilapidated concrete buildings, battered by harsh sea winds and waves, create a chilling but fascinating scene. Number 3. Varosha, Cyprus. Varosha was once the epitome of Mediterranean paradise. In the 1960s and 70s, its golden, sandy beaches and modern resorts were a playground for the rich and famous. Celebrities and tourists would flock to this glamorous destination, seeking sun, sea, and luxury. But today, it's a ghost town and a haunting symbol of the island's turbulent past. The turning point for Varosha came in 1974, amidst the turmoil of the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. As the Turkish army made their advance, residents would flee in panic, leaving behind their homes and belongings with the belief that their departure would only be temporary. However, the district would be fenced off by the Turkish military, and access became restricted. This once bustling tourist haven quickly transformed itself into a no-man's land. Walking through Varosha now is like stepping into a time capsule. The streets that were once lined with thriving hotels, restaurants, and shops are now overgrown with vegetation. The buildings, left untouched and decaying, hold the belongings of those who fled, their lives having been suspended in time. Personal items, furniture, and even vehicles are left exactly as they were, creating a profound and unsettling atmosphere. But what makes it particularly intriguing is its contrast to the rest of the area, which continues to bustle with life just beyond the barbed wire. The area serves as a reminder of the human cost of political conflict, a physical manifestation of division and loss. It's a place where time stands still and where the echoes of a once vibrant life are felt in eerie silence. Number 4. Craco, Italy. Perched atop a rocky hill in southern Italy, the ancient town of Craco presents a dramatic image of an abandonment and decay. With its origins that date back to the 8th century, its story is woven with tales of feudal lords, plagues, and peasant revolts, but it was the forces of nature that would eventually lead to it being abandoned and turned into a captivating ghost town. For centuries, it thrived despite challenging terrain and political upheavals of the Middle Ages. The town was strategically located, offering panoramic views that were crucial for defense during the most turbulent of times. Its narrow streets winding up the hill would be lined with buildings that bore the architectural stamp of various eras, from the medieval times to the Renaissance. However, geographical advantage also became its curse. The town was built upon unstable clay soil, and over the centuries this precarious foundation led to numerous landslides. The situation would be made worse in the 20th century. In the 1950s, poor agricultural practices would further destabilize the land, and a series of landslides and earthquakes in the 1960s and 70s wreaked havoc. The final blow came in 1980 when an earthquake forced the remaining inhabitants to abandon their homes. Today, Craco is a hauntingly beautiful relic of the past. The empty shell of its Norman tower, the desolate remains of its churches, and the ghostly hollows of homes and public buildings all evoke a sense of life interrupted. Now nature has begun to reclaim the structures and vegetation creeps over the stone walls and wildflowers blooming in the cracks. Number 5. Bodie, California. Nestled high in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California lies Bodie, an authentic relic of the American gold rush era. Once a bustling town brimming with gold seekers, outlaws, and entrepreneurs, it's now frozen in time, preserved in a state of arrested decay. The story of Bodie begins in 1859 when gold would be discovered by W.S. Bodie, after whom the town would be later named. This discovery would spark a gold rush, transforming it from a small mining camp into a wild and thriving town of nearly 10,000 people by the 1880s. Saloons, mines, railways, and even a Chinatown would spring up as tales of gunfights and a rowdy nightlife typical of the lawless spirit of gold rush towns. However, as quickly as it rose, its fortune would decline. The mines, having yielded around $35 million in gold and silver, had begun to dry up. And by the 1890s, the boom would be over and the population dwindled. The final nail in Bodie's coffin was a fire in 1932 that destroyed much of the town, and what remained was left abandoned. The once lively streets, now silent and empty. In 1962, Bodie became a state historic park, and a decision would be made to maintain it in a state of arrested decay. Rather than restoring the buildings, the park preserves them as they were left, a genuine snapshot of a 19th century gold mining town. Walking through Bodie is like stepping back in time. Over 100 structures remain, including a church, a saloon, and the old general store, with interiors still stocked with goods. Number 6. Oradour-sur-Glane, France. In the rolling countryside of France lies the small village of Oradour-sur-Glane, now a solemn memorial to one of the most tragic war atrocities of the Second World War. June the 10th of 1944, in a brutal act of retribution, Nazi soldiers massacred 642 residents of this peaceful village and then set it ablaze. The ruins have now been preserved exactly as they were left, serving as a powerful and haunting reminder of the horrors of war. Before that fateful day, the village was typical. Its streets were lined with shops, cafes, and homes where families lived their daily life, seemingly far removed from the ravages of war. However, the war's shadow would fall upon the village, leaving a great scar in history that would never heal. Visitors to the site today walk in silence amongst the eerily preserved streets, and the remains of the village tell a harrowing tale. Charred cars sit where they were torched, sewing machines, rusted and frozen in time, are visible in the remains of homes, and the village church, where many were tragically killed, remains a centerpiece of the massacre. What makes the village particularly moving is the decision to leave it in ruins as is. Rather than rebuilding, the government chose to maintain it as a memorial to the victims. A new village was built nearby, but the original remains untouched, a place where time stopped on that tragic day. Number 7. Kolmanskop, Namibia. In the heart of the Namib Desert, where the harsh desert winds whip across the sands, lies the ghost town of Kolmanskop. Once a bustling hub of early 20th century diamond rush, this now abandoned town is gradually being reclaimed by the shifting sands, telling a story of both fleeting prosperity and relentless force of nature. The story begins in 1908 when a railway worker found a diamond in the area. This discovery would trigger a frenzied rush, luring in fortune seekers from far and wide. And soon the town would be born, transforming almost overnight from a barren desert into a thriving mining town. At its zenith, it was the symbol of luxury and wealth in the middle of a desert, complete with mansions, a hospital, a ballroom, a school, and even the first tram in Africa. Life there was a strange blending of harsh desert living and European luxury. The town boasted modern amenities like ice-making machines and an X-ray station, yet it was constantly battling against the encroaching desert. For a while, the town would flourish with high yields of diamonds that were extracted from the rich sand. However, the boom was not to last. After the First World War, the prices would drop, and richer deposits were discovered further south. And by the 1950s, it was all but abandoned, left to the mercy of the desert. The desert then began its relentless reclamation, with sand invading the buildings, filling up rooms, and transforming the town into a surreal landscape. The once grand buildings, now half buried under sand, create an eerie yet fascinating scene. Tourists and photographers are drawn to this ghost town, captivated by its unique blending of German architecture and desert backdrop. Number 8. Centralia, Pennsylvania. In the coal-rich regions of Pennsylvania lies the near-deserted town of Centralia, a place with a fiery, smoldering secret beneath its surface. What was once a thriving mining community is now a ghost town thanks to an underground mine fire that has been burning since 1962. Centralia's story is one of a relentless disaster, a slow-motion evacuation, and a town consumed by an unstoppable inferno. Centralia's descent into its current state began innocuously with a fire at a landfill in 1962 near an abandoned strip mine. The fire then managed to ignite an exposed coal vein, leading to an underground blaze that spread all throughout the extensive network of mines. Attempts to extinguish the fire would be unsuccessful, and over the years it grew, undermining the town and releasing harmful gases. The reality of the situation became frighteningly clear in the 1980s. Roads and backyards began to open up, belching out hot and toxic gas. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy fell into a sinkhole that suddenly opened up in his backyard, barely escaping with his life, and these events would mark the turning point, which led to a government decision to relocate its residents. The town, once home to over 1,000 people, would be reduced to a handful of steadfast residents who were clinging to their homes amidst the danger. Walking through today is an eerie experience. The streets are mostly empty, with abandoned homes and buildings dotting the landscape. Graffiti Highway, a section of the old Route 61, shows visible signs of the impact of fires, with smoke seeping through the cracks in the asphalt. The atmosphere is heavy with a sense of loss and an unspoken danger lurking beneath. Number 9. Kayaköy, Turkey. In the serene landscape of southwestern Turkey lies this haunting village, with its abandoned stone homes and deserted streets, standing as a reminder of the profound impacts of war and forced migration. Once a thriving community, it would become a ghost town in the aftermath of the Greco-Turkish War and the subsequent population exchange between Greece and Turkey in the 1920s. Before being abandoned, it would be home to a harmonious mixture of Greek Orthodox Christians and Turkish Muslims living side by side while sharing a vibrant culture. The village was a mosaic of traditional Greek architecture with over 2,000 homes, 2 churches, schools, and workshops, all nestled against the mountains. The community would be a bustling center of agriculture and craftsmanship, with winding streets echoing the sounds of daily life. However, the conclusion of the Greco-Turkish War in 1923 would mark a dramatic turn for the town. A treaty would mandate a population exchange based on religious identity, which had forced the Greek Orthodox residents to leave their homes for Greece, while the Turkish Muslims from Greece had relocated to Turkey. The once vibrant town was now left virtually empty, as its new inhabitants would struggle to settle in the unfamiliar and abandoned village. Today, it is hauntingly beautiful. The stone houses, some still bearing the scars of fire and decay, stand empty and silent, overlooking the valley. The churches, with their faded frescoes and broken bell towers, speak of a spiritual life, and nature has begun to reclaim the village with trees and wildflowers growing amidst the ruins. This only adds to the atmosphere of the tranquil desolation. Number 10. Humberstone, Chile. Deep in the heart of the Atacama Desert of Chile, the ghostly remains of Humberstone tell a story of both economic boom and abrupt decline. This former saltpeter mining town is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Founded in the late 19th century and named after James Humberstone, a British chemical engineer, he was central to the production of sodium nitrate, also known as saltpeter. This mineral would be crucial for fertilizers and explosives, making him an important player in the global market. At its peak, the town was a bustling community which was home to over 3,000 workers and their families. Complete with schools, a theater, a swimming pool, and other amenities, a rare oasis of life and activity in one of the most dry places on Earth. Life in Humberstone would revolve around the mining industry. The town's prosperity would be directly linked to the demand for saltpeter, and for a time, it seemed as if the good times would never end. However, the invention of synthetic nitrate in the early 20th century would lead to the decline of natural saltpeter mining, and by the 1960s, the town was no longer profitable. In 1960, it would be abruptly abandoned, leaving behind homes, machinery, and personal belongings. Today, walking through the town is like stepping into a snapshot of the past. The arid climate has helped to preserve the town's buildings, offering a glimpse into life during the saltpeter mining era. The theater still stands with seats waiting for an audience, the schoolrooms are as if the children had only left, and the machinery in the processing plants loom silent and still. The ghost town is eerily quiet, with only the wind whispering through the abandoned streets. Number 11. Fordlandia, Brazil. Deep in the Amazon rainforest lies the remnants of Fordlandia, a testament to a grandiose but ultimately failed dream of American industrialist Henry Ford. In the 1920s, Ford had conceived this town with an ambition to create a utopian, American-style industrial community and to secure a supply of rubber for his automobile empire. Fordlandia's story begins in 1928 when Ford had purchased a vast tract of land in the Brazilian Amazon. His vision was to cultivate rubber trees while creating a self-sufficient community that was modeled after a typical Midwestern American town, complete with homes, schools, hospitals, and even a golf course. Ford aimed to export both his brand of industry and his vision of American lifestyle to the heart of the Amazon. However, his dream would soon encounter numerous challenges. The main issue was the rubber plantation itself. The rubber trees, planted closely together in rows, were susceptible to disease, a problem that was not faced in their native Southeast Asia, where they were spread out in the jungle. However, the local workers resisted Ford's strict regulations and unfamiliar lifestyle, which led to tensions and uprisings, and by the 1940s, the town was in decline. The rubber project was a commercial failure, and during the Second World War, synthetic rubber emerged as a more viable alternative. In 1945, Ford Motor Company would sell the land back to the government at a loss, and the town would be largely abandoned. Number 12. Plymouth, Montserrat. Plymouth is a modern-day Pompeii, a city frozen in time by the devastating forces of nature. In the 1990s, this once vibrant port city was buried under layers of ash and mud flow following a series of catastrophic eruptions from the previously dormant volcano nearby. The disaster began in 1995 when the volcano, having been quiet for centuries, suddenly roared to life. As ash would spew into the sky and pyroclastic flows thundered down its slopes, Plymouth became a town that was under siege. The residents who had lived their lives under the benign gaze of the mountain were then forced to evacuate, and in 1997, a massive eruption would seal the city's fate, burying it under a blanket of ash and rendering it uninhabitable. Today, it's a ghost town with many of its buildings buried up to their first floors in ash and debris. The town's streets, once bustling with activity, are eerily silent, with only the shells of buildings and remnants of everyday life visible. The clock on the church tower, stopped at the moment that the lava flow hit, serves as an eerie reminder of the suddenness of disaster. Number 13. Agdam, Azerbaijan. This once thriving city's tragic transformation into a ghost town is the direct consequence of the territorial disputes and armed conflicts that erupted in the region in the late 20th century. Agdam's descent into desolation begins in the early 1990s during the Nagorno-Karabakh War. The city, once known for its bread production and bustling market, became a strategic point of contention, and in 1993 it would fall to Armenian forces, leading to the mass exodus of its population, which was estimated at around 40,000 at the time. In the aftermath of its capture, it was systematically looted and destroyed, leaving it a shell of its former self. Today, it's a haunting sight. Buildings are reduced to ruins. The streets once full of life are now lined with the skeletal remains of homes, shops, and mosques, and the only structure that remains relatively intact is the mosque, although it too bears the scars of conflict. Nature is slowly reclaiming the area, with vegetation growing amongst the rubble and wildlife roaming freely in what was once a bustling urban landscape. Number 14. Wittenoom, Australia. Wittenoom in the remote Pilbara region of Western Australia is a ghost town with a legacy that serves as a warning about the dangers of industrial misadventure. Once a thriving mining community, its downfall would be sealed by the very mineral it was built upon, blue asbestos. The town's story begins in the 1930s with the discovery of crocodilite, or blue asbestos, in the area, and by the mid-20th century, it was the largest blue asbestos mine in the world, attracting workers and their families with the promise of prosperity. At its peak, the town was home to thousands of residents who were unaware of the invisible dangers they were being exposed to. However, the deadly nature of asbestos, with its link to serious respiratory diseases and cancer, would soon become apparent. Despite mounting evidence of health risks, the mine continued to operate until 1966. The aftermath would be catastrophic, with many former residents and workers suffering from asbestos-related disease. In the following years, it would become a ghost town, and in 2007, the government officially removed it from all maps, discouraging visitors due to the lingering asbestos fibers in the area. The buildings, once symbols of a booming mining town, now stand empty and decaying, engulfed by the vast and dusty landscape. Number 15. Rhyolite, Nevada. In the desolate landscape of the Nevada desert lies Rhyolite. Born from the gold rush frenzy of the early 20th century, this ghost town was once a hub of optimism and prosperity, and now it remains as a symbol of the transient fortunes of gold mining towns, a mere whisper of its former glory. Rhyolite's rise was rapid. Founded in 1904 after gold would be discovered in the nearby hills, it quickly ballooned into a bustling ghost town, and at its peak it had a population of around 5,000 people, complete with electric lights, water mains, newspapers, a hospital, a stock exchange, and even an opera house. It was a melting pot of dreamers, miners, entrepreneurs, and adventurers who were all lured in by the promise of gold. However, the boom would be short-lived, and by 1908 the mine's output began to falter, leading to a swift decline. Investors pulled out, businesses would close, and residents left in search of new opportunities. By the early 1920s, it had become a ghost town, with its dreams and aspirations buried as quickly as they were unearthed. Today, what remains is a brief glimpse into history. Visitors can see the ruins of the bank, the jail, and the train depot, all standing as silent witnesses to a time of unbridled optimism and inevitable disappointment. The town's remaining structures have been eroded by time and weather, but are a captivating sight, invoking the spirit of the Old West and the ephemeral nature of human endeavors.